Hey, how you doing? Brian Anderson here from the Bridge Church. We are working our way through Romans, and we've come to a real doozy today. Romans 9, verses 22 to 24. Some of the most difficult and challenging verses to interpret and understand in the whole book. So let's dive in. Romans 9:22. What if God, although willing to demonstrate his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction? And he did so to make known the riches of his glory upon vessels of mercy, which he prepared beforehand for glory, even us, whom he also called, not from among Jews only, but also from among Gentiles. Now, as you will recall, in verse 21, Paul mentions two kinds of vessels for honorable use and vessels for common use. Well, in verses 22 to 24, he expands on this idea and amplifies it and unpacks it a little bit. And he says these two vessels are really vessels of wrath and vessels of mercy. He says the vessels of wrath are prepared for destruction. And he says the vessels of mercy are those which God prepared beforehand for glory. Now, did you notice the subtle difference between those two? Vessels of wrath are prepared for destruction. Vessels of mercy are those which God prepared beforehand for glory. See, when it comes to the vessels of wrath, we're not told who prepared them for destruction. When it comes to the vessels of mercy, we're told explicitly that God prepared them for glory. And I think that's significant. Why the difference? Why the little change there? When it comes to the vessels of wrath, they have to accept responsibility for their destruction. Paul has already said that the wages of sin is death in Romans 6:23. He's already told us in Romans 2:5 that their day of wrath is coming because of a stubborn and unrepentant heart. And in verse, I think it's 19, he has the objector saying, why does God still find fault? For who resists his will? Yes, God does find fault. God does hold sinners responsible for their sin. Their own sin is preparing them for destruction, and they must wake up and take responsibility. They are accountable for those actions that they have made. So the sinner is responsible for his destruction, but when it comes to mercy and glory, God is the one, according to the text, that prepares people for glory. He's the one that sovereignly bestows mercy. Just look back earlier in the same chapter. He will have mercy on whom he has mercy. He has mercy on whom he desires, Paul has said. So this mercy that comes upon some is that which is a sovereign work, a sovereign gift of Almighty God upon certain people. So what are the two different destinations revealed in this text? We've got destruction as one destination and glory as the other destination. Think about destruction for a minute. Jesus taught in Matthew 7:13, he said, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter through it. In other words, one of the destinations that people will arrive at is destruction. That's the end of their life. That's where they're going. That's where they're going to end up at. Destruction. The other destination is glory. God's mercy will be lavished upon those that he saves, and they will spend eternity with God in glory. In heaven, in the new heavens and the new earth, they're going to be with the Lord in glory. Now, verse 22 is saying that although God has every right to show his anger and his power to the unrighteous, he's super patient with them. He holds that anger and that power back year after year after year. God is very long-suffering. However, his patience will finally come to an end one day. And that day is the judgment day, the day of God's wrath being revealed. So at some point, God is going to call the wicked to judgment, and then they're going to receive his wrath. Now, where does God get these two different kinds of vessels? You've got vessels of wrath, vessels of mercy. Where do they come from? Well, verse 21 says they come from the same lump. God has one lump of clay, and out of that one lump come vessels of wrath, vessels of mercy. What kind of lump is this? I submit to you that this is a fallen lump of clay. This is a sinful lump. How do we know that? Because there are vessels of mercy. The word mercy presupposes that these people are guilty and miserable in their sin. And so when God bestows mercy upon them, he gives them relief from their misery and from the guilt of their sin. So these people are in the same lump as those who are vessels of wrath. They're vessels of wrath because of their sin. These people over here are vessels of mercy because of their sin. The Bible teaches that the saved are no better than the lost. They come from the same fallen, sinful lump. In fact, in Ephesians 2, he says, "And you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that now works in the sons of disobedience." And then he goes on to say, "And that we were the same even as the rest." In other words, the saved come from the very same sinful, depraved, wicked background that all of the people of mankind come from. We're no different. We're no better. And then the question is, who are these people that God has mercy on? Verse 24 says, "Even us, whom he has also called." So the call of God is what makes the difference in people's lives. The call of God is what changes a person from being a vessel of wrath into a vessel of mercy. So here's the real big question. Have you been called? Are you a vessel of mercy, prepared beforehand for glory? You say, well, gosh, I want to be. How can I know for sure? Go back in your mind to Romans 2:5. "But because of your stubbornness and unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself in the day of wrath and the revelation of the righteous judgment of God." The thing that keeps you a child of wrath, storing up wrath in the day of wrath, you know what that is? A stubborn and unrepentant heart. So if you would like to be a child of God, a vessel of wrath prepared beforehand for glory, stop having a stubborn heart. Stop having an unrepentant heart. A stubborn heart is a heart that resists God. Stop resisting. Yield. Submit. Surrender to him. Believe upon Jesus Christ. And then a repentant heart is a heart that's willing to forsake its sin, confess its sin, admit its wrongdoing, and turn to God for forgiveness and faith. So will you do that today? Will you turn from having a stubborn heart, an unrepentant heart, and will you have a yielded heart, a repentant heart towards God? If so, you too can know that you are a vessel of mercy prepared beforehand for glory.